Hello and welcome to this edition of the original series TUTV Community Forum. I'm your host, Lindsay Bittler. Today on the show, we're privileged to be talking to one of the most committed and talented people in Philadelphia radio, Miss Loraine Ballard-Morell. She's currently serving as the news director and community affairs director for all 6 of Philadelphia's Clear Channel stations. She even hosts Insights that airs on WDAS-FM and Power 99. Not only is she making waves on the airwaves, but Miss Morell is extremely active in community service. She's won several prestigious national awards. I'm pleased to welcome to the show Miss Loraine Ballard-Morell.
It's nice to be here, Lindsay.
Thank you for joining us. And I know you're such a powerful woman in Philadelphia radio. How did you get your start?
Well, you have to go way back into the mists of time to when I was actually a freshman at the University of Maryland. And I just accidentally walked into a radio station, and people had always told me that I had a really nice voice. And so I said, what the heck, I'll stick around and try out. And that's what happened. I tried out, got a shift, and it all started there.
Wow, right back in college. But you ended up getting your master's degree in teaching.
Yes, yeah. I never actually majored in broadcasting. At the time, I was a dance major. And then by my sophomore year, I realized that I was not going to be, any good at it, so I decided that teaching was my backup. And then I transferred to a school called Simmons College, and they had a program that allowed me to get my undergrad and grad degree at the same time. So I did that, but in the meantime, I was volunteering at radio stations, I was doing internships, I had a minor in communications. So I kind of ignored all of my education courses and kind of slid through those, but in the meantime spent all of my time working in radio.
So you were volunteering at these radio stations, and then you were a teacher's aide, right?
I was.
Yeah. And so then how did you end up making the move and the switch from being in the classroom to in the radio station?
Well, I think probably the greatest advice that I give to all of my students and interns in general is to be an intern, because by doing that, I was an intern at a lot of big radio stations, and then even after I graduated, I continued to be the news director for MIT's radio station. And so I was out there in the world and creating an image, creating a brand. And so when a job opening came up, which was news director for WBUR in Boston's public radio station, they were reaching out with a minority training grant. So as a result of that, I was a candidate. And then improbably enough, they actually hired me for the job. But I wouldn't have gotten that job if people didn't know who I was. So even though I was a student, by the time I'd applied for the job, I had created a brand for myself. I was a known quantity. People knew who I was.
Right, and you came in as a news director, which
Yeah.
is a pretty obviously important position. How was that, your first job out of college, and you're in charge?
It was horrifying. It was horrifying. It was stressful. It was traumatic. I used to have those terrible nightmares about being locked out of the studio, 5 minutes before airtime, things like that. And I think basically what it was trial by fire. I really didn't have the experience and the maturity initially to really handle that job. And so I had to kind of learn everything on the fly. And fortunately, I had some support. Unfortunately, I also didn't get the support that was promised as part of this grant that was the reason why I got the job. So a lot of it was on my own, but I was eventually able to hang in there. And I think part of my greatest flaw and probably greatest strength is that I'm very pig-headed, and I never really figured that I would fail. Even though it was torturous at the beginning, because I made lots and lots of mistakes, I just kept at it until it started to work.
And then it started to work, and then from Boston, what was that middle part before you ended up in Philadelphia?
Well, there was another job, which leads me to another great lesson I learned. I became the news director for WBCN in Boston, which is a huge rock station. So I went from public radio to a big rock station, probably the equivalent of a WMMR here. And that lasted for about a year. And that was another case of too soon, too fast, not really being prepared. And I was actually fired from that job. And it was also traumatic. I hate to say that because it's not as though everything was really bad, but it was really tough. I really didn't understand that I needed to ask for help. I thought I had to do it all myself. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't really know how to create mentors and a support system. So it ended up with me being fired, but the positive side of that is that I learned a lot of lessons. I learned, number one, that I'm not my job, that I figured out who my real friends were, because working for a really glamorous station like that, you get a lot of people around you who say they're your friends, and then when you're not there anymore, they're not your friends anymore. And then you also find amazing people that just come out of the woodwork and help you out. So I learned that, and I also learned that you need to really hang in there. It turns out that the guy who originally hired me at WBCN went to work at WMMR, and after a couple of months he brought me down and I started working here. Wow. In this city, and that's what got me to Philly.
Wow. So you had to not only start at this job where you're new and making a lot of mistakes, but then the next job didn't work out. What did you learn from those first two experiences that are helping you in your career today?
Well, number one, I've learned that it's important to create a support network and to really try to learn as much as you can about everything that you can about the business. I mean, I think that right now the secret of my longevity is the fact that I have a lot of skill sets. I know how to do a lot of different things. The other thing too is that I learned that in a way, and this is kind of counterintuitive, image is everything. The first time when I was fired, I was devastated. It was a very traumatic experience, and anyone who's ever been fired can testify that it can be a really, really tough thing. But the second time I was laid off from WMMR, I realized that, you know what, it happened. People ask me, how are you doing? And I always said, fantastic. I always said, things are going great, and this is what I'm doing. I decided to create this future that I was going to live into, and that future was creating a job that would be my ideal job. So I learned that you can't let external situations get you down, that you can actually create your own future, and that that's exactly what happened. I did create my own future. I created the perfect job, and it's the job that I've been in for almost 30 years.
And I know you saying that you have to create this job, and you were telling me before the show that you were the first, one of the first women and the first woman of color. How did that play into your story?
Well, I think that initially when I got my first job, that was back in 1977, and that was sort of at the very beginning of the women's movement, but I was essentially the only woman and only person of color in an all-white, all-male environment. And people really didn't want me to succeed. I mean, it was really quite clear that they didn't think I belonged there, and they didn't think that I would last. So that was tough. And then there's also sexual harassment. Back in 1977, I don't even think there was a phrase for that. And there are several people, several guys who used to harass me constantly. And until I finally decided that I would stand up to the both of them, and I did. And that ended that. So in many ways, I was experiencing experiencing what women now understand that they can have happen to them. But at the time, there was really no one to talk about this to. There's really no other role models. There were very few women in the business to look up to. And so I was sort of kind of creating things as I went along. That's kind of hard to do, but I did it, and I learned a lot from that. And now I look back on it, and I'm amazed that I stuck with it, but I did, and here I am.
I know you're saying that that's obviously so challenging, those instances back as you're trying to move forward in your career, and you're saying that it taught you a lot, but really would you say that that's something that you're always going to remember in your career now, and that really, basically what I'm asking is how does that affecting how you do your job today, those past experiences?
I guess the past experiences only deepen my understanding of how to do my job. Everything that happens to you, whether it's good or it's bad, it contributes to the person that you are. And that if you're strong enough and if you're making the right kinds of decisions, I think, you take the worst experiences that happen to you and you learn from those experiences, because each one of the toughest things that ever happened to me were the best lessons that I ever had. I learned, from the sexual harassment thing. I was actually pretty shy and very much not that much of an assertive person. I learned to be assertive. I learned that you can't sit back and let people say things to you or do things to you and not stand up for yourself. And so I learned how to stand up for myself. So that's the lesson that I learned from that. And again, from being fired and being laid off, I learned that it's not the end of the world, that there is a future that you can live into, and it can be more wonderful than the one that you just left. You just don't know that. And so why not believe that it is going to be that?
Right. I feel like I should be taking notes, writing everything down. It's like life lessons. But describe for us and everybody, I know that it's kind of hard in this media world and in communications to have a typical day, but for you as news director in community affairs, what's your kind of typical day like? What's your process?
Right. Well, the first thing I do is I check my email. It's an enormous task, and sometimes I never get to all of them because there's just so many. That's one thing. I'm constantly fielding requests. People are asking for things. They're asking us to support a campaign. They want us to come out to an event. They want me to speak somewhere. They want one of our jocks or one of our announcers to speak somewhere. So I kind of coordinate all that. And so that's always in the background of coordination. I also produce actually 2 shows. I produce Insight, which airs on Power DAS, AM, and FM.
And you're the host of that too, as well.
And I host that. And then I also produce What's Going On, which is on Radio 104.5, Mix, and Q102. So I'm booking guests for that and scheduling those and doing those interviews. And I also oversee the internship programs, so I'm overseeing those people. I do all the external communications, so I just wrote a news release for an event that's going to be announced on Q102 that I can't say anything about quite yet.
TUTV can't get the inside scoop?
No, not yet, but 5 o'clock tonight you'll be able to hear it. Depending on when this is going to air, you will have already figured out what it is. But anyway, so I'm doing that. I do government relations. So every day, today I'm here talking to you. Another day I might be, later on I'm going to be at a rally, which I helped our station get involved with. There's very few quiet days, very few. But it's really good for someone with a short attention span like me. I love having a lot of things to do. In fact, the more things I have to do, the better it is, the more productive I am. And so there's really no typical day. Some days I'm in the office all day doing a lot of different things, fielding requests. Other days I'm out in the street doing something like this, or going out to a rally or some sort of community event.
How do you find time to do all of those things?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the challenges for being in a position like this, or being in this business in general, is trying to create some kind of balance between the job that you love and the personal life that you want to have. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to keep my weekends open as much as I can. I still have things that I do on the weekends that are work-related, but I try to make time. And my big challenge for the future is being able to make more time. And because what happens inevitably is if you spend all of your energy on your job, then other things start to fall apart, and including your body. And so you want to really try to create some balance.
Has that been tough, working and being so active and involved in personal life? Is that something that you've kind of had to learn to balance?
Well, I've been very fortunate in that I've had partners who've been very supportive. Mm-hmm. And I currently have an amazing partner who's just fantastic, very, very kind, very supportive. So And he's there with me for a lot of things that I do. So that's great. My son's in college, so I don't need to worry about him. I often took him with me to a lot of the events that we did, and I suggest that that might have something to do with the fact that he's a political science major and wants to get into politics. But I tried to figure out a way to incorporate my personal life with my work life. And I lead a very exciting, interesting life, and I want the people around me to be part of it. So, sometimes it's not easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Right, and it's obvious just from talking to you that you love what you do. Why is that? What about radio and what you're doing professionally makes you so happy?
I think that I'm very fortunate in that, everybody has some core talents and strengths. If you take those personality tests and you go up, the top 5 things are the things that you're really good at. The bottom 5 things are the things that you'll never be good at. Like for me, the bottom thing was organization. I'll never be good at that, but I will have people around me that are good at it. My top thing is service. So regardless of what I ended up doing, no matter how my life took me, I would have somehow been involved in an area that would have allowed me to give back. I am just incredibly fortunate and lucky that I got to do that through the work that I have, because that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I'm able to do through my work, is to really serve. And it gives me tremendous satisfaction and joy when I know that I've helped somebody. And I know that through this, career that I've been able to help a lot of people. And it's not an ego thing, it's just a thing. It's just, I love that. I love helping people. I love being able to facilitate people into making their dreams come true as much as that's possible. So that's why I love this job. And plus it's fun. I get to meet a lot of really great people. Get to meet you.
Oh, thank you.
And, I get to meet just fascinating people, whether they're incredibly famous people or just an ordinary person that has done something extraordinary. It is fascinating, and it makes every day brand new and interesting.
I want to go back to the community service because that's such a huge part of what you do. Just describe to us some of the programs and some of the things that you're doing through your current profession now.
Well,
I know there's a lot.
Yeah, I don't. Where do you start? Well, we're out at a lot of the walks that are supported by, like the AIDS walk. We do a live broadcast. We do breast cancer. We're at a lot of the walks. So that's one big thing that we do. For instance, as we are recording this, we're going to be at a Trayvon Martin rally tonight. And sometimes there are things that we plan in advance, and sometimes there are things that just pop out of nowhere that we jump on because they're important. I look back in my early career when a little boy was killed. His name was, and I'm now blanking, but there's a little boy that was 5 years old that was killed, and Yates. His name was Yates. And he, as a result of that, we created a crack hotline. We closed down crack houses. We started the Increase the Peace campaign, which is really in existence to this day. We do campaigns, public service announcements. We go to regular events that are scheduled, and sometimes we create our own events. Like we're doing Peace on the Street this summer, where we're going to go out to different locations and we're going to bring resources together and try to help those communities fight violence.
It's fantastic. And do you have a moment where you just kind of, there was someone that you just knew that you had helped, and I know, I'm sure that moment happens a lot, but can you think of a specific instance or specific story that really touched your heart?
Well, I look back to Marcus Yates, and I look back, and he would have been, I think, 31 this year. And I was at a tree planting, and I saw his family, and I saw his brothers, who at the time when I first knew them, they were like 5 and 7, I think. And they're both grown men. They're both really positive. And I got to be a part of their life. And in particular, one, Tony Yates, he's married, he has a kid. He actually came up to me and he thanked me for being there for him when he was young and for helping him, be the man that he is today. And can you imagine, I mean, this is a guy who at 7 years old cradled his brother's head in his arms trying to stop the bleeding because he was shot in the head. He thought he could stop the bleeding and maybe save his brother. He couldn't do that. Imagine how traumatic that is. Imagine how that would destroy a person's life. And I got to be in this guy's life and both of their lives, his other brother, Malcolm. And then to have it come full circle and have him just speak in front of all these people and just thank me for being there. Sometimes you kind of know when you touch people. You can be very specific. Here's $1,000 for a scholarship. I ran into somebody the other day we gave a $1,000 scholarship to about 10 years ago, and he thanked me because he said it was because of that last chance scholarship that he was able to buy the books that helped him graduate from school, and now he's a general manager of a Modell's. And he just came up to me. I was totally out of the blue. I didn't remember him initially. And, he just said thank you. I mean, life can't get better than that, It's just great. I'm so lucky. I am so fortunate. And those are just a couple of small examples, but I get to do that. That's what I get to do. And wow, it's like you wake up every morning and you think, thank you for letting me do this job. I am lucky. Some people get up and they hate their job. And I can't say that there aren't times when I've been frustrated or that I've been upset and my job's, upset me. But I am probably one of the luckiest people that I know, that I get to do what I do. And I get to touch people in the way that I do. You just kind of move through life and you just, you don't think about it really. And it's just sometimes you get tagged. Someone tags you and they go, hey, you did that. And because you did that, this happened. That's the most wonderful feeling in the whole world.
And I know it's so integral for your professional career to have this service be such a part of it. And it's obviously touched your life and touched other lives. But on a grand scale, how important is it for people in the professional world to really give back to their community?
I believe it's a requirement. We have this tremendous tool that's the communications field, which has changed so much in the last 10 years. I think that the thing is that I can't tell somebody you've got to do this. It really has to come from inside. But I think that as a medium, we have the responsibility to use our tools to make the kinds of positive change that we require. That's how I got into this in the first place. I said, power comes from information, power is information. You can empower people by giving them information so that they can make the right decisions that can help their lives.
Right.
And so I think that we do have a responsibility as a medium to make that contribution. Not everybody agrees with me though.
And you've been talking about social media and it's becoming such an integral part of radio and television and seeing more and more of it and more stations getting this new thing basically. Where do you see it going? What do you think is the future for social media and how that plays into the traditional forms?
I've seen it tremendously change how we do business. We all tweet, we all have Facebook pages. We do a lot of work with artists now. We have a performance studio, and it seats about 30 people, and we bring in artists every day. Whether it's from an RFF or a Power 99. You know, we had Snoop Dogg the other day. We've had Good Charlotte. We've had that crazy new band that all the kids love, whose name is now escaping me. But anyway, we had them all in, but what we do is we bring them in, we stream it live, we create digital content, and we post it on our website. That's kind of new for us. And we have people coming in every day. So my job is now even like twice as much fun because I get to meet all these really fun people. And so we're content creators. We're constantly creating content. So all the content that we're creating, we're funneling it to all the fan sites for all the different bands, and in turn, they're coming back and they're hitting our website. So it's kind of a mutually beneficial situation. Looking at the future, I would never pretend to predict what the future is going to be, because, you know, who knew that Facebook would be so huge? Who knew that Twitter would be so huge? I mean, those are phenomenons that have really blown up in the last couple of years. I was I'm always the first adopter at least I had been, at my company. I had the first computer and, you know, first one who was, you know, going on the internet, the web, and all that. But every day there's something new. There's, you know, Pinterest. I mean, there's all kinds of new things that are coming up. And I think that in order to stay current, you have to stay current with what the new thing is. You know, it's hard to predict what's going to happen, but whatever's going to happen, I think 5 years from now it's going to be completely different than what it is right now. But what it is, I couldn't tell you.
And we've gotten a lot of advice from you today, but a lot of the people watching the show are Temple students, and like me, you know, about to graduate from college. What is your biggest advice for whatever career it is, wherever it is that students are going to end up? What can you tell them right now? What do you want them to know?
Number one, they should have done an internship. If they can, they should do more than one internship. Maybe they can do like an independent study or something. They need to be in the workplace of the place that they want to work, or in the field that they want to work in. We call internships a 3-month job interview, and that's essentially what it is. I always tell my interns that what you want to do is you want to create a brand. You want to create, like, say, the Lindsay brand. You know, you want people to know when they think of you, they want to have an image. You want them to have an image of what you are and what you represent. Being in the business for as long as I have, there's the Loraine brand. You know, there's certain qualities that people associate with me. You want, as a young person starting out, you want to start creating that brand. You want to brand yourself in every way possible. You want to have a website. You want to have all of your portfolio up on that website. You want to do all the social networking and all the media. You want to be friends with all the people that you want to connect with. You want to follow all the people that you want to connect with. So you want to really start doing that. And more, I suggest people start earlier. You know, a lot of times people don't get to do internships until their senior year. And I say, listen, if you have an idea of what you want to do, try to do it as soon as you can. Sometimes you can't because the school doesn't allow it. But if you can, do it, because I've had an intern who was with me twice. She started when she was a freshman, and now she's a senior. And now she's convinced more than ever this is what she wants to do. But for others, they might have been a sophomore and they tried it and they didn't like it. And that gave them the opportunity to try something else. So internships are absolutely paramount. And then once you're there in the internship, you want to create your personal brand. And however you can, you know, you want to be the go-to person. I look back in my career and the people that I know that have made it very big in this business, and those are the ones that I remember. They're the ones who created a brand that was memorable. In one case, an intern that I had 20 years ago or more, I wanted to hire her. She wasn't able to be hired at that time, but in the back of my head I said I would hire this girl, and I did. 3 years later, she had graduated, about to graduate, and a job opening happened. I hired her, LaRhonda Upshur, and she was with us for 12 years. And so I would say that would be my advice.
Wow, and great advice. So thank you so much for joining us today. You have such an amazing, interesting story and an incredible career that I know is far from over. So thank you again for coming on the set today.
Well, thank you. You asked wonderful questions.
Well, that'll do it for today on this edition of TUTV's Community Forum. I'm your host, Lindsay Bittler, and stay tuned next week for even more movers and shakers in Philadelphia.